So welcome to another Fuji webinar. These are, I've lost count. I think we're up to 15 or 16 that we've done this year, all different topics. So I appreciate those who come back and see multiple sessions. Today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Dataverse and really getting into what Dataverse is and when should you use it and when should you not use it and all the good information around it. I put up a slide here. This is a presentation of Microsoft PowerPoint. And this gives you a really good idea, just schematically, of what Microsoft's trying to do. So Power Platform, which we've had a lot of content on, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, etc., is all built on a foundation that includes the Microsoft Dataverse. Okay, so this is it's not just a little part of the Microsoft family. This is a huge initiative that Microsoft's done. And it sits right there with the universal data connectors, which we'll talk a little bit about, and the AI builder. All the AI modules from Microsoft are also part of the foundation that the Dataverse sits within. Dataverse was really designed from the need for having a common database that was native to the Power Platform. And we'll discuss that in general. As I mentioned on the invites, I always do just a few seconds. I want this to be a technical discussion, not a sales and marketing deal, but people do ask, who is Fuji? We're a consulting company. We help people implement solutions all around the globe. We have our headquarters here in the United States, Dallas, Texas. That's where I am based. We were established in 2014. We have we're about 500, 600 people scattered throughout US, India, and Costa Rica. So we can do nearshore and offshore work for customers. We offer 4 basic services. We do digital project engineering, quality engineering, low code, no code, so we can help test your environments, make sure everything's running good. We have a full cybersecurity. We have an SOC. We run services for security down in Costa Rica, so we're in the same time zone as the Americas. We do all the cloud migration advisory services. That includes Azure, that includes AWS, that includes Google. We've been looking at a little Oracle lately. We're doing managed services for that, migrations, design, architecture, solutions. And the last thing is the data analytics. That's data engineering, data visualization. I'm a Power BI specialist. We have hundreds of people on our team that are really good at doing advanced data analytics, dashboarding, etc. Who am I? There's a little bit about me. I come from a long Microsoft background. I was there for a really long time. I have a technical background, and I'm what we call a generalist, which means my job is to understand how everything kind of fits together and works well together. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's get into it, though. Let's talk about the Dataverse. This also called the common database model, basically, that Microsoft's worked on. And what it is it's a native database built for Power Platforms and for Microsoft Dynamics. Now, if you're not familiar with Dynamics, there's a lot of the Dynamic solutions, which include, the CRM solution, all the accounting solutions. The CRM has so many modules and packages. There's just a whole universe of stuff out there, in addition to what we've spent a lot of time on, that Power Platform environment. Power Platform is the universal low-code, no-code development tool that allows you to build out business solutions, whether they're on an app or a desktop or a mobile device. And as I said, we've done a lot of these webinars discussing these contexts. We're at Fuji right now. We're engaged in a number of different ones. I just came off a call just a little bit ago with a company that's building a very large approval process. So you can make requests for purchases or accounting or whatever the case may be, and run it through a system that uses business logic to decide who can approve and who has the right to see, and tracks it and puts all that information in. So we've got a lot of these Power Platform projects going on for customers. We would love to help you. If we could do it for you, great. If we could teach you how to do it, great. This is part of our free way of teaching you how to do it, kind of take you through some of these modules. And so today it's about the Dataverse. Now, when I talk about it being a native database, I want to make sure everyone understands what that means. Native means that Power Platform and Dynamics was actually designed, this database was designed with those in mind. And it is a native database, meaning that you don't use any connectors. There's nothing you have to do to access that data. This provides a much, much faster input and output into the data. Let's say you have SQL Server, or you have Oracle, or you have any number of great databases out there, all of which you can use with Power Platforms and Dynamics, no problem. If you already know Transact SQL, if you already have been a DBA and you've worked with those systems, there's no reason to change. You do not have to convert over to Dataverse. You still might want to once you see all that Dataverse can do, but you have connectors that'll connect right to those. And just so that everyone understands, when we talk about connectors, especially with databases, connectors are not a bad thing. They're just not native, meaning that when I want to make a request to my SQL Server, I have to first connect to the connector then connects me to SQL Server, and it does translation back and forth to get my data into and out of either CRM, Dynamics, or Power Platform. And truthfully, you're talking about maybe a second delay in doing that, or a millisecond delay, depending on how the connector's built. But that can add up. If you do a lot of transactions, that can slow your process down. So having a database that's built and tied in directly to the product provides, as I mentioned, much, much faster access. It gives us a lot of benefits. A lot of you may say, well, I've never used this before. And I would say, yeah, you have actually. You probably didn't know it. Microsoft is using Dataverse as the core database for a lot of what's going on in Office. If you've ever used Power Apps, you've used Dataverse, because all Power Apps are stored in the Dataverse. Even if you don't have a Dataverse license, even if you've never used Dataverse in your life, that's where it's actually being stored on the back end to allow Power Apps to do what Power Apps does. Same thing for the Dynamics products. If you've used Dynamics, you're using Power Apps because it's built right in. So all of the Dynamics and all of Power Apps data, they're all stored in the Dataverse right now. And Microsoft is continuing to add more and more integration. It would not surprise me at all if the vast majority of the Office apps will eventually store their information in Dataverse because it's so much faster and so much more efficient. And that's what I'm going to spend some time today showing you and kind of taking you through. Don't worry, I do have a couple of slides, but I do have a lot of demos. The first question I think people want to know, why would I want to use this thing? Do we need another database? And as I mentioned, if you already have a SQL Server and you're already trained and you already know Oracle and you already know MySQL, the answer may be no, you don't need another database. Keep working on those. But the Dataverse is really designed for creators and developers, and I put that in specifically, who do not have deep database development knowledge, so that it supports what Microsoft refers to as that low code, no code mentality, okay? The idea is I shouldn't have to send someone to college for 2 to 3 years to learn all of the deep database transactional coding and development and M code and all that other stuff in order to use the product. Low code, no code means they've tried to make it so easy that even if I didn't have years and years of experience, I'd still know how this thing would work and act. And people who are just regular business users now could actually build out solutions using these types of tools. You'll see how this applies to databases in just a minute when we go into our demo environment. Number one is secure by default. What that means is Dataverse, because it's tied into the Microsoft ecosystem, is tied to Active Directory. And that means that in order to use Dataverse, you have to have an Active Directory account, you have to have a subscription, you have to have a login, you have to have all that. And because Active Directory is tied to the entire security system of Microsoft, you inherently, you natively inherit all that security by default. So you don't have to spend immense amount of time setting up each user for each table and each record and where they can go and what they can do. A lot of that gets inherited through its love and adoption of Active Directory. So I can, for example, I am an accountant And when I go in to use the Dataverse, because it knows who I am and who I work with, I inherit all the views of the accountant group. So I know I can get into the spreadsheets and folders relating to accountancy without someone having to go in and individually set all that or previously put that stuff together. So secure by default, meaning it's literally tied together to Active Directory security, which is a phenomenal security system in the Microsoft ecosystem. You can, if you want to, you can secure by group, you can secure by user, you can secure by the actual row and field and record and all that stuff. But you're going to see that Dataverse is designed to kind of set all that stuff up for me so I can get to work much quicker versus taking 2 weeks to go through and optimize and organize all these tables. And again, I'll show you a demo of this. It's a scalable platform for both Power Platform and Dynamics. What does that mean? That means it can store a lot of data. I believe the limit is up to 40 terabytes. Is it 40 terabytes or 20 terabytes? Let's say 20 terabytes. I think it's 20 terabytes. Right now, Dataverse native by default can store 20 terabytes, which is a whole lot. Large enterprise accounts often don't even have that big of a database. So it has that scalability built in. It can grow with your business. It can expand out, do all kinds of stuff. It's also designed around this common database model. The common database model, basically, Microsoft's marketing term for this is Dataverse, right? So they took the common database model and they named it Dataverse in the Microsoft ecosystem. Very typical. Microsoft, kind of brands their technology. But that Dataverse, that common database model, is a standard that the whole industry uses. So what happened is Microsoft got together with Oracle and Sybase and MySQL and all the big players of the world. And what they did is they said, one of the problems that customers have, you may go merge with another company or you may buy out another company and you inherit their database. And then when their information comes in, you want to now combine it with your information. But that's a real problem in today's environments because people have different naming standards. I call it a cell phone, you call it a mobile phone. I call it a zip code, you call it a postal code. And there's all these different ways to basically say the same thing. So these industry titans, and quite a few of them, all got together and said, why don't we just set up a common naming schema that all of our databases will be built off of. We'll all call it a zip code. We'll all call it a, whatever the case may be. They'll lay out defined definitions as standards for the entire industry. So Dataverse adheres to those standards. You're going to see in a second when I fire up a database that there are already hundreds of tables set up with all the schemas for these standard naming conventions in them. And the reason this is important, you probably figured this out by now, is if I buy another company that was using a standards-based database like SQL Server or Oracle or whatever, and I want to build my app using Dataverse, I want to pull their data over, I don't have to do any data mapping anymore. Used to be you have to map this field to this one and this, and it took months, if not longer, in order to get those mappings set correctly and get that data pulled over. And it was a really laborious process. Well, if everyone's using the same naming structure, then you don't have to worry about that. And Dataverse by default uses that same naming structure. By the way, I know I talk quickly. We don't have a ton of time, so I go pretty fast. But if you want to ask questions, I absolutely encourage you to ask questions. Please use the little question pop-up. I've got another window. I can see exactly as they come up. I'm more than happy to take questions as we go. Make sure that you get the information that you need. We're almost to a demo, but I just want to clear this last part off. So we've done the industry standards. The other thing that Dataverse can do is it can automate a lot of these advanced features that previously you had to spend weeks, if not months, writing. Things, rules, business process, AI, natural language, all these kind of advanced concepts that used to take a while to kind of write and code and build and do. It does it for you automatically because it's tied into this platform of database information. And again, you'll see this in just a second. So let's go do it. Let's do a demo. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to show you, we're going to use Power Apps, but again, I could use CRM or I could use other tools to use Dataverse, but Power Apps is the easiest one to show you with. When we create Power Apps, there's 3 different types of Power Apps that can be created. And again, I'll show you this in the demo. You can create what are called Canvas apps, you can create model-driven apps, and you can create websites, okay? Let's start with the end first, the websites. The websites are a brand new package that Microsoft came out with. It's called Power Pages. It's currently in beta. I don't think it's gone released yet. I'm not a huge fan. What Microsoft's trying to do here is they're trying to create a Wix, okay? A website that just automatically, low code, no code, allows you to quickly generate beautiful pages and get them out the door and set up. I'm not saying the product is bad. I'm saying the product is in very early beta, and when I used it, it was pretty laborious to use, and that was a couple months ago. Microsoft absolutely will clean this thing up. They absolutely will make a competitor to Wix, and they're going to have a huge advantage because the back end of this thing, as we're going to show you here, is Dataverse, and so that gives you a whole bunch of benefits that you wouldn't normally otherwise have. But just understand that you can build that. We're not going to talk about that today. We're not going to go into that today. The other 2, Canvas-driven and model apps, or model-driven apps. Canvas means I'm starting from scratch and I'm going to build everything myself, which means I'll go customize the pages and I'll drag and drop the controls and I'll make it look pretty. It gives you full control over every single thing that you're going to build. And the back end for that can be Dataverse, okay? And you can set that up, but you can also use these third-party connectors I was talking about to connect to any database in the world. And when I say any database, I'm totally serious. Any database. I've been doing this now onwards of 30 years. Of course, the product hasn't even been out that long, but for as long as the product's been out, I've never had a customer that we couldn't attach to a database. There are hundreds of database connectors. Plus, you can always take the data down to comma-separated value, or put it into other formats that allow you to easily migrate the data back and forth. You can write your own custom drivers. But basically, I have not found a driver. There's never been a case where I haven't been able to get a driver from that library that we talked about. Go back to show you this. This data connector library. This is just filled with hundreds of the most common used data connectors out there. And so when I do a custom app, sorry for jumping around quite so much, but when I do a Canvas app and I'm building my own custom app, I can connect to any data source that I want to. The biggest difference between Canvas and model-driven, it's important to understand, model-driven apps can only connect to Dataverse. They're a special version of the Dataverse. And we'll start there in our demo. So I'm going to get out of PowerPoint for a second. And I've gone ahead and just logged into my portal. So this is portal.office.com, and I'm going to zoom this in so you can see it a lot better. And when you come up, typically when you come to Office, you see your Office stuff, you see your business stuff, and there used to be an icon for the Dataverse in there. There isn't anymore. The way you're going to access the data is through the different tables. So when you see tables, this is kind of a metaphor for the Dataverse. And here are a ton of tables. Now, to let you know, with this account, this is my Fuji account that I'm logged into, I haven't set any of this stuff up. You, right now, if you're following along with me and you open up your portal.office.com, you log in with your Office 365 subscription, if you have the license rights, your organization has given you permission to get into Power Apps or do some of this, you'll see this tables icon. And even though you've never built anything before, you'll see hundreds of tables already in here. Well, what's going on? This is what I was talking about of that common naming service. For example, let's just open up any one of these, doesn't matter. I'm going to open up account. So I'm going to click on the 3 little ellipses here and say that I want to edit the accounts table. And this will take a second. And I've got a lot of stuff open. Oh, actually, you can see there's nothing here. It's just completely empty. Oh, no, it does have a few records. My apologies. What it's doing here is just some sample data. I think I was doing a demo the other day. But what it's doing here is it's showing me the table, and you'll see it says plus 143 more. And I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't even set this up, and it's got 150 different columns. What's going on? Well, if you pull this down, these are the ones that in my demo I decided I wanted to look at, but I can keep looking: account number, account rating, address 1, address 2, address 3, on and on and on and on and on. These have all been put here because these are the standard naming conventions that all the database organizations now use. They all have a created by field. They all have a description field. They have a toggle for do not block bulk emails, do not block or do not allow emails, do not allow faxes. So these are, even though I don't use them, I haven't put any data in here that uses these are the standard conventions. And this prevents me from having to start with a completely blank table and then say, let's add this column and put a column name in, or let's add this column and go one by one by one and slowly kind of build this stuff out. Not only can I just turn one of these on, so let's say I want to track their industry. I'm just going to click industry, and when I do this and hit save, it just added that industry column in here. Well, it's even better than that. Part of low code, no code is this concept that it now understands the industry column, and it might put rules or it might put business process stuff in there without me having to write any of this. For example, if I add a social security number, if I'm in the US, it knows the formats for social security numbers or phones, or if I say it's an email address and I want to store someone's email address, it'll put the rules that know that it's an @ company name .com.biz, and if it doesn't comply with that, it'll automatically pop out and say, hey, did I get this right? It looks like you might be missing something. So rather than me having to program that, all the Dataverse has already put all those columns, hundreds upon hundreds of columns. And remember, this is just for the accounts field. We haven't gotten to the 100 other tables that it made. All of this stuff is spelled out. So you as the user, just pick what you want. I do want address. I want the country or region. I want their fax information. What else might I want? Which account they're tied to. Notice this has an asterisk, so it's going to tie to another table. So I just click this, and every time I do this, it rebuilds my database, and it's adding in this specific information. This account is actually a GUID. It's tied to another table, and I can say, yeah, I want that, or no, I don't want that. I could make that go away. I can even go into the properties for any one of these tables and say, okay, you're looking at the account right now. Here's the description, which is its primary column. You can edit, you can change this. You can also add in your own columns. So I can create entirely new columns that were not part of the ones that were there. So again, I just go out to new column, click on the new column button. It says, well, what do you want to put in here? I want to put in the add date, right? So the date I added this customer into my deal. So date we added customer to DB, okay? And then it's going to go in, it's going to say, well, what type of data is this? And notice that it gives you long lists here: text, numbers, date and time, currency. These are all groups. If I click on date and time, it says, okay, now based on the date and time, what is the format? Do you want the date only, or do you also want the time appended to it? Again, normally you'd have to program all this stuff out. I'm just selecting it really easy with a box. So I'll say, let's do date and time, that's fine. And then it's gonna ask for a behavior. We're gonna talk about this. Actually, I'll probably talk about this right now. But when I come down here, it says, do you wanna calculate a date based on what it is? Do you wanna roll this up from something else, or keep it simple? I'll keep it simple. If I go down to the advanced options, it'll give you all the other specifications. So if you're into DBA, if you're a programmer and you want to get in and change all this, you can. But what I want to show you is this thing called time zone adjustments. This throws a lot of people with Dataverse. So I want to throw out one of these kind of tips and tricks right at the start so you understand this. This will get you. What the local time adjustment is when I enter this data, or when a user enters this data, how do you want that data to be displayed? In other words, do I want to enter it at the user's time zone? So I, Mike O'Neill, in Dallas, Texas, have decided at midnight I'm going to submit this new piece of data. Then it would come in showing midnight because that's the time in my local time zone. Okay, that's what this is basically saying. Take the user's time zone and tap it in there. The problem is an hour later, someone in Phoenix, actually I should say LA 2 hours later, because Phoenix doesn't always do the time zone switch thing. But my daughter, who is in LA, she decides to put one in at midnight, even though in my time it's 2 a.m., it's still going to show it as midnight her time. I can change this adjustment if I want to and make this time zone independent. Basically what it does is it uses the server's time, basically Greenwich Mean Time, and it marks them all at exactly whatever the server time says it is. So even though it's midnight, when I submit that data, I will actually see it written as 5 hours previous or 5 hours later, because in Greenwich it's 5 hours +5 or -5 on the time zone. You can see how complicated this all gets. But here I could just set this and say, mark it as an independent time zone. And now I know that it doesn't matter where my user was, where they entered this, I can compare and say, oh, this user entered it 2 hours after this user. So it puts it all in kind of a standardized time zone. This will screw you up royally if you don't understand this concept. So hopefully that made some sense. Are you capturing the data at the time zone of the user, or are you capturing at the time zone of the Dataverse server, basically running and marking them all as the same time zone? I recommend time zone independent so that you can tell if it was 2 hours later or 4 days later or whatever the case may be. This really does, by the way, screw things up, especially with dates. If I put it in at midnight, or let's say I put it at 12:01 on today's date, 9/5, and my daughter does it at the same time, hers will actually come in a day early because it was only 10 p.m. the day before when she put it in. So now it looks like we put it on different dates and we didn't. So be careful of this. Make sure you mark the time zone independent if you want. And then again, there's all kinds of great options here. Notice that I can enable column security, and if I don't know what that is, there's a little eye here that'll tell me more about it. I can enable auditing, and there's a whole audit system that'll put in place. This is if I need some advanced logging and information so I can go back and trace it all. I got it exactly the way I want to. I'm just going to simply say save. And when I do this, it's now going to build in a custom column and add it to the columns that I've already had via the common naming service. Okay? Hopefully that all made sense. So we can go in and we can build out any information that we want to, and we can see it, we can select it, we can put it all in, we can customize it. But 9 times out of 10, the best part of the Dataverse is just picking the ones you want, because they've already been programmed, they've already been set with the right rules and policies, they've already been set with the right data types, so I don't have to waste any time putting that all together. Okay? So that is the easiest explanation, just throwing out the data. So what am I going to do with this? Well, let's go back to Power Apps for a second, because Dataverse makes a lot of sense when you actually start making something. So I'm going to make a new app. I'm going to create a brand new app, and it's asking me, do you want to start with data? Do you want to start with a page design that you've already put together, or you want to use a pre-done template? I'm going to start with some existing data, and that can include the Dataverse, right? And you'll see here, I can upload Excel files, I can connect to external data via SQL Server or SharePoint lists or anything else of the sort. I can pull that in any way I want to. Let me go back. There's one thing I want to show you first. Let me go to Create. If I hit the Create button, this is where I'm going to see, are you starting from complete nothingness? I just want a blank screen. Or what I want to do is show you the power of what Dataverse can do. This is the reason why you want Dataverse. I'm going to go in here and say, I'm going to start from a Dataverse table. Okay, so I click on Dataverse, and it's going to come out, and it's going to load up a little wizard, and it's going to say, okay, we have to connect to your Dataverse account. Let's make sure we got the right one. and I see here's Maiko@fuji.com, and you see this little diamond here. Dataverse is a premium add-on. It's a premium license. Now this gets very confusing, and I'm not sure, I don't think I mentioned this at the start. This is going to be a short kind of demo on Dataverse and why you need it and what it's for. I may do 5 or 6 more presentations just on Dataverse. I could fill up a month on Dataverse. There's just so much to learn. This one is kind of sticky because when you start talking about licensing of Dataverse, yes, you have to buy subscription licenses to Dataverse. Yes, there's like 5 ways to do that. I get mine through a developer license. So if you have MSDN, there's a special license that includes Dataverse connectivity and Power Apps development, all that stuff. Here's the tricky part and why I don't want to go too deep on this. I'll be more than happy to talk to any of you about licensing issues. It's just going to take me an hour to explain it. Not my favorite part of the Microsoft ecosystem. But with a copy of Office, especially a E3 or E5 license, which are the most popular copies of Office, Microsoft grants you, as part of that license, some rights to Dataverse. Not all, but some. You don't get some of the advanced connectors, you don't get some of the other stuff, but you do get some rights. So if you have an E3 or E5 license, chances are you have access to Dataverse, and you can do a typical number of engagements with Dataverse in there. Like I said, don't want to go too deep in that. We'll be glad to talk to any of you independently and kind of take you through it. It just takes a really long time to explain it. But no, if you have an E3 or E5 license, as I mentioned, you've already got some rights to Dataverse. You should be able to do everything I'm doing. So I'm going to click on this, and then it comes up with all those millions of tables, right? I can scroll down here and I can pick any one of these. Now remember, I haven't really even set these tables up. These are just using the default names. If I go down here, I can look. I forgot the name of the custom table I set up. I think I would be smarter than that. Well, let's just use accounts because we had that earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and connect to accounts. That was the one we were just looking at. So we'll go ahead and click on here and say connect. By the way, I could have used that search engine if I knew the name I was looking for. It would take me right there. But this screen is showing that it is now building a 3-pane app using the Dataverse. Now that took, I don't know, 30 seconds, something like that. But what it just did, the reason it took so long is it connected to the Dataverse natively, so it's very fast, but it also wrote the screens for the browse screen, the detail screen, the edit screen. This is already a working app without me having to do anything. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If we were doing this custom, I'd have to build each one of these screens independently and then tag them back to the Dataverse. But one of the great features of the Dataverse is if you already have the Dataverse in place, or just have the templates that we showed you already with the common data names. That's what I did. I connected to a table with those common data names, and I said, let's go ahead and build off that. Watch what happens when I run this now. I can go up, and it's pulling from the database. You remember these were the 3 that we had in there. And on any one of these, I can click on it, and now I see here's the information. I want to edit this information, so I click on this. This phone number is wrong. It should be 435, whatever. This is all bogus information. I hit yes, and it instantly will write back to the record, change the record. And so I'm now functioning live against my Dataverse. I can add new records. Let's put in a new one. I want to put in city is Dallas, account name is whatever, Fuji, and my phone number is blah, 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 whatever. And hit yes. And by doing that, it just added that record into the database. If I made a mistake and said, oh, I didn't want to do that, and I now want to change that or edit it, I can do it by clicking on it. Then I go back in and I can just say delete this. So all the things that normally I would have to write the code to add a new record, I'd have to write the code to edit a record, I'd have to write the code to delete a record, and it would take me, again, weeks to do. By using Dataverse, It just built all the forms to do this for me automatically, saving me just a ton of time and development effort. And I could still go in, I don't like the blue and I want to customize all this stuff. You still have full control over everything. It just jumped you way ahead by building these browse, detail, and edit screens for me automatically. That is a huge, huge plus for using Dataverse, that low code, no code automation. If that's not of interest to you, Dataverse may not be the right database for you. That's what a lot of people really love about this particular data product. Okay, so that allows me to go in and apply all this information and put it together. I'm realizing I'm way behind. So I'm gonna jump back to our PowerPoints real quick. So I wanna go through some key features, and I showed you some of this just a minute ago, but I wanna make sure everyone understands. So I'll just go down the line here. You can easily shape and store your data. So again, I don't have to know Transact SQL. Hooking tables together, relating tables together is a breeze with Dataverse. There's a little wizard that just lets you apply this. You don't have to write any coding, inner joins, outer joins, all that craziness. It just goes away because Dataverse has an interface that allows me to throw it together. You can use custom columns, or you can add from those standards that we already talked about. Relationship setups, I just talked about. It does a great job with unstructured data. So files, images, screenshots, things that are just kind of loose pieces of data, you could actually organize. If I wanted to, let me go back here, and I go back into my data because I have the accounts here, and I want to go edit the table or look at the data itself. I can go click in, I can look at the account properties, I can do everything else. Well, one of the things we can do when we go in to build this table is we can put that unstructured data connector on. In other words, it says, do you want to add attachments to this? And you click yes, and it says, okay, well, what kind? I can put in Excel sheets, I can put in just random image files, I can put in PDFs, I can put in anything else. It'll just accommodate it right inside the data table itself. So it's a great way of taking kind of that loose stuff and tying it back to a structured table that you've already put in place. I use that a lot. We use that for attachments quite a bit. No questions so far, so I'm going to keep on going. You have automatically built in an audit history. You saw that checkbox and it was turned on by default. So at any time, if I'm like something just went away and a check disappeared, or so, we can go back through the audit trail and we can see every single step along the way, who touched it, when they touched it. It's all tied back to Active Directory and it's all logged and protected. So it's really great for doing audit traces and the like. I mentioned before, it uses Active Directory automatically. So the security is tied in, and I can tie it to a user, I can tie it to a role, role-based RBAC access control. So I can put that together with it, make it work really well. There's a whole section in here. Again, I could do a full hour presentation on Dataverse just looking at the business logic rules. A great example I mentioned before, if it's an email field, it knows what an email field looks like. It automatically programs that. And so if you put in an email that doesn't adhere to a standard format, it'll double check to make sure that it's captured it correctly. I missed the @ sign, or I put in, there's no extension on the end of it. It'll do that. It'll also allow you in those records to go through and using business rules. I can say, I don't ever want duplicate records. I want, let's say, customer list. I don't want the same customer listed twice. So without me having to write anything, or without me having to put any code in there to check that, those business rules are run across my data to keep the Dataverse clean and optimized and organized. And again, I don't have to write it. Excuse me. So things like duplicate records, there's quite a few of these that are kind of set up. Again, these are already aligned to the columns that it knows you're going to use using the common language model. So it's only when I add the column in for an email table that's going to keep track of this, it'll apply the email rules to that email table. And before you ask the question, yes, you can go in and edit it and change it and update it and do all that good stuff. But I'm just trying to give you kind of a high level view. You can create, just like in SharePoint, you can create your own calculated columns. So I can make a column that is a formula based on other columns, or I can do roll-ups, lookups, things of that nature, where I'm rolling one table into another. That process is much easier to do in Dataverse than anything else I've seen. So if you're going to do a lookup table, or you're going to attach to a list, or whatever the case may be, you can do that. By the way, I mentioned, we use the Dataverse as a data source, but I can also attach it to external sources at the same time. Let me show you what that looks like real quick, because I did want to show you the data models. When I'm in here and I went under the database, you can see that this app that I'm creating has attached to my Microsoft Dataverse. And that allows me to tell it which table I want to go to and which fields and records and all that. I can add additional sources of data. And you can see it comes out here and says, okay, well, I've got some other ones you've used currently. What else you got? And I can go under connectors, and it just keeps scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I say, see all connectors, and it's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of connectors. Here's Autodesk, Adobe cloud stuff is in here. Any database you can pretty much think of is going to have a connector, because these organizations really want you to use their data. I've got just a few more minutes. We're kind of running close to the end, so I'm going to skip ahead. We talked about the audit history, security. We already talked about that. Business rights. Okay. I told this scalable, so it is 20 terabytes of data, above 20 terabytes of data. Here's another big, huge feature. They call it polymorphic lookup. It uses the natural language engine, and what this allows you to do is to, when you're programming, notate your data in dot notation. So I could put table dot record dot, row that I'm looking at, and it will automatically use that lookup to know exactly which piece of data in the system that you're trying to pull out. That's a huge, huge feature. If you're new to coding, that's a massive benefit. It uses this object structure that just makes it 1,000 times easier to find what you're looking for. This is really critical in the whole search schema. So again, if I was doing this in SQL or Oracle or whatever, I have to build all this search criteria and stuff. It's already there with Dataverse. It's already plugged in and it's ready to go. Last couple things I really want to make sure everyone understands. Number one, delegation. Delegation is always the number one issue when we come to Power Apps. What delegation is, I actually wrote a little app here just to show you this. I am not going to save that. I do not want to save that. It's cancel. Sorry. Said one thing and hit the wrong button. There we go. So I'm going to go back to my Power Apps real quick. I created one last night called Delegation. By the way, I told you we're doing a lot of customer work. You can see all the projects that we currently have running. Here's the program that I put together for delegation. What delegation is apps can hand off the labor of filtering and searching and pulling the data to a back-end process. Let's say I want to work and pull data from a SharePoint list. I can tie my connector to the SharePoint list, but the question is, when I want to filter that list, how much of the work is done by SharePoint and how much of the work is done by my Power Apps? So what I've done here is I created a real simple Excel application. The Excel application has 4,000 records in it, okay? And I made two connectors to this data. The first connector takes the data directly from Excel running on my desktop, normal desktop Office version of Excel. The second connector is using Excel Online. I could add a third connector that would use SharePoint and a fourth connector that uses Oracle and SQL and whatever else. but I just wanted to show you side by side. This is the exact same data. One is using a local copy of Excel, the other is using an online copy of Excel. And what I did, you can see the data listed here, and feature for feature, they look exactly the same. But then I put a label down here, and I'm asking it, based on the connected data that you have, just tell me how many items are in the list. And you'll notice when I'm directly connected to Excel, I get all the items, 4,472. When I connect to Excel online, I only get 100. This is delegation. What's happening is Excel online cannot delegate the results back to Power Apps. It doesn't have the ability to run in Excel online the filter and only hand back the results. So it's only taking a snapshot or a sample of the results and giving them back to me. I'm only getting 100 records here. If I were to run this, let me do it this way, you'll notice as I scroll down, there are literally 100 records, 99, whatever. If I go over here and I scroll down, I'm getting all 4,472. So this is trying to explain to you what delegation is. Delegation has these set up. If you don't know that delegation is happening, you're going to have this problem. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't tell you. I'm only looking at 200 records now instead of my whole 4,472. I'll have a specialized deal that deep dives into delegation. I'm looking at my clock though. I'm running out of time. Lastly, model-driven apps, as I mentioned, and the portals, the websites are only Dataverse. So you have to use Dataverse if you're going to do a model-driven app. Model-driven app means it builds all those forms for me. That's what I showed you in the demo. And this last one we talked about, date and time fields, they have these behaviors. You want to make sure to think about it and say, do I want to capture it at the user's local time zone, or do I want to make it time zone independent, track it to a UTC, universal time zone, which makes sure all the data gets tied together. So in finale, because I'm right at the end of this, Fuji's out there. We can help you. We do this all the time. This is just an introduction to kind of describe what Dataverse is, give you a couple of ideas. I expect to do a lot more webinars where we'll deep dive on this. We'll get into some real solutions using Dataverse. I hope to show you some of the speed examples because you really can appreciate it till you see it side by side. Looking at the questions, there are no questions, and I'm out of time anyway, so I think we're done. I appreciate it. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is up at the beginning here. Oh, it's not up here. Let me add it in. My chael.o@fuji.com. I will send you a follow-up with a recording of today's presentation, and then again, hopefully we can see you at another Fuji training event. That's it, everyone. Thanks so much, and we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.